It's working. Let's keep talking so we can see. And let's see. There it is. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm John Miglosh for the Wisconsin DMA, International Society for Strategic Marketing. And here we go. Okay, ad of the day. McDonald's pops up in classic impressionist paintings. And what do McDonald's and impressionist painters Edward Manet and Pierre-Auguste Renoir have in common? Well, in a way, they both represent classic, iconic imagery. I don't know if that's true. But an agency in DDB Athens created a meant-to-be classic motif of impressionist paintings, and I'll show you, and product placement, I guess you call it, right? Product placement. So they inserted what's funny is that they put this is like photorealist, and even the chicken nuggets. You might not notice the chicken nuggets down there, but we'll highlight these so that you can see them on the show notes, which will be available shortly after the show. WDMA.org. You can subscribe, and it's free, and you can get that. Black tie event. Well, I'm not sure of that either, because everybody wore that kind of outfits in those days to everything, including ball matches and whatever, playing bocce ball. I don't know if it's called the same thing in France, but they play it. Okay, and then we've got at the beach, we've got the McDonald's bag there. Not clear what exactly is in it. That one at least looks more like a painting. It fits in the painting. This one is totally ridiculous. There's the Diet Coke. It's terrible. We're wrecking the painting. Let's make it a little tighter here. I don't use this tool very often. Anyway, I just thought that was fun, and I was curious about where it ran, and it was in Greece, because I didn't think that McDonald's would like put this all over everywhere, and they didn't. Okay, Jackie Stracco, first Chief Commerce and Business Solutions Officer and Executive VP at the USPS, found me a graph. I was looking for this graph. I looked all over the place, and she doesn't have a source, does she? Let's see. Excludes travel. Da, 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 da. Source. eMarketer, October 2021. Okay, so what I was interested in showing was that she quotes up here that the total retail sales. Total retail sales was, I messed myself up here with that other line thing, was a growth of 2.5% year over year, and but e-commerce grew 16.1%. Okay, so or this is projected apparently, and so people think, we've been pounding that e-commerce drum for literally 12 whole years or something. This is really, really the place to be. And yet, you look at this, and this from here to there is non-e-commerce sales. And this, after all the growth and all the hype, the bottom little red part is the e-commerce sales. And you might want to note that most of that is done by Amazon and Walmart and Target and people ordering online, Best Buy. I've been doing that for years. So this, in a very real sense, can't stand without this. And this is okay. So this is 2021. So 6.4. Is that trillion? Let's see. Yeah, trillion. 6.4 trillion, and of that, not even a trillion is e-commerce. Okay, so 1/6, less than 1/6. So this is So this, and even if it grows, when it grows, okay, so this will grow 200 billion, and this will grow 600 billion. But it's still about a sixth. And that's why you got to be careful with percentages, it's not going to be just e-commerce. It doesn't make any sense. And the fact is, the only way Amazon works as well as it does is because they have warehouses everywhere. They figured out that warehouses were cheaper to build than stores in strip centers. True, but you know, it's it's like it's like the difference between a merchant with a wagon and a merchant with a storefront and a wagon. Anyway, let's go on. Here was a story from National Retail Federation. When I was looking for that other data, I found this. Retailers announced twice as many store openings as closings in 2021. And there's a picture of a young lady with an open sign and a kind of a boutique location. And the article starts out with Wall Street's retail apocalypse narrative may have finally been put to rest in 2021 as major U.S. headquartered retailers announced more than 8,100 new store openings. Though we lost 4,000 in 2021 and we lost 10,000 in 2020. So what do you got? So you got 12,000 closings and 8,100 openings. Also, I think one of the things that really stands out in defense of the Wall Street Journal, a lot that they need any defending by me, is that the openings were mainly Dollar General. Of that 8,000, about 4,000 of them were Dollar General, depending on which fiscal year. National Retail Federation has a funny calendar. We actually support National Retail Federation reporting in our database if you're into that. It's a crazy but interesting calendar. Anyway, and then Five Below is electronic stuff at $5 or less. And so basically what's happened is this kind of store is probably closed. Urban boutique stores got hit hard when mayors and governors allowed basically everybody to be looted that anybody wanted to loot, and only the big retailers are surviving. So again, it's sad. Okay, so at times of war, marketing is rendered superfluous and ridiculous. That's from Mark Ritson. And Mark always makes me think, so I don't always agree with him. But one of his former students said that she'd like to ask a question, and he says he has a sense of obligation to that. She lives in Kiev metropolitan area. I looked up the pronunciation of Kiev because Joe Biden keeps saying Kiev, and it may be right. It may, a lot of cities are pronounced differently. Like Roma is when you're there, and Rome, everybody says here. So it's very likely we've completely, or Beijing and Peking and whatever we used to call it, Peking. It's very likely that we're mispronouncing it, calling it Kiev, but Google says it's Kiev. I did look it up. So I'll go with that until Google changes. But she said, have you ever have any thoughts on marketing strategy in a situation of war? And he had already written 2 paragraphs about, would you like a reference, a reminder, a link to an old paper? But that just struck him so powerfully that he didn't have anything to say at the moment. Plato said, only the dead have seen the end of war. And that's pretty true. And but for many, especially those born after the fall of the Berlin War, there haven't been that many wars, unless you count, the Serbian War that we fought in, where we bombed the churches of Serbia in the winter. On Easter Sunday. A lot of these conflicts are have religious undertones or overtones. I don't know why the United States would bomb churches in Serbia, Orthodox churches, but it's well documented. And war is rarely do you find out what's really going on in war unless you can talk to real people who really live there. And so I'm a little disturbed because this article draws many, many conclusions from the mainstream media reporting, which is fun when you look at it. The president in a flak jacket that's from a year and a half ago. That's okay. I mean, maybe he has a flak jacket on today, but he hasn't apparently produced a similar picture. Anyway, so anyone reading their news feed will be dumbstruck by the juxtaposition of everyday marketing minutia of influencers, advertising, and awards, and the posts that followed, and then the posts showing men and women preparing for darkness, war, and death. And I'm not trying to minimize that. But as Mark rightly points out, the threat of private labels coming against our brand, or the risk of inflation, was looking relatively benign compared to the threat of nuclear weapons. Now, of course, I grew up I was in first grade. I was 6 years old in the Cuban Missile Crisis, and we trained for nuclear blasts. I don't know what good it would have done. We would have been at ground zero for Western Milwaukee, which would have been hit. That's where you launch one off. You set one off. If you're going to hit Milwaukee, there's no sense in focusing on downtown and nuking most of your weapon out into Lake Michigan. No, it would be out in Pewaukee or someplace. So, I had nightmares for years and years and years and years about the Cubans coming, and we played Cuban war games. You be the Cubans and we'll be the Americans, and we'll fight you in the playground. So, in that shadow, where we almost blew up the whole world, everything does seem a little meaningless. Like Zero Hedge says, eventually none of it's going to matter. None of my shows, I think to myself, well, if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, my grandchildren can watch these shows and decide whether they like them or not. Hey, Style Consultant, it worked. Yay, thanks for chiming in. Yes, very good. Try over on LinkedIn and see what's going on. I get such nice comments, but I think most everybody watches it later. You can put it at 2x and it works out really well. It's always under 10 minutes. There was a video going around of the war announcements on CNN, and then an Applebee's ad where the guy's dancing on the screen right next to the war announcement. And it does look pretty stupid. Now, what I thought Mark should have figured out was, did that, as tasteless as that was, how did that work for Applebee's? I mean, look at all the salience of this. Mark is always talking about salience. He says, basically, get your ad out there and get it talked about. And the Applebee's ad is getting talked about. My guess is that it multiplied their reach beyond their wildest imagination. Even though it is inappropriate to some extent, it's really CNN's fault. I mean, if they didn't have split screen and showing, the war pictures, which are mainly not of this war, and in case you haven't figured that out, we've seen very, very little actual footage, because now we have the capability of companies and people actually going back and finding video and finding stills and finding out where they were actually from. So I saw a picture of a woman in front of an apartment building, and that had been a bomb explosion in 2018, a gas explosion. It had nothing to do with war at all, but it was, vibrant. And I saw a picture of jets flying over apartment buildings, and that was from a Moscow air show a couple of months ago. I guess it was practice runs of jets flying in formation. I saw another one, and this was right during the first night, where it looked like anti-aircraft was going off over a city, and we were told that was Kiev, and that the Russians were attacking at night. It turned out to be footage from a video game that was completely it was completely fabricated, CG. So be careful the opinions you draw right now. But Mark is right. Great leadership in marketing grows profits more than the projected percentage. And if you can do that, you're a great marketer, right? Whereas, and here's the grim yet determined appearance, in his flak jacket from 2 years ago that we see all over everything. Zelensky. Anyway, I don't know what's going on over there. I don't want to draw too many conclusions. But it does literally show the important things in life. My wife and I have been listening to some books on tape together, and it's been really nice just listening together and turning off the TV, turning off the internet, getting me away from the computer. It's good. That's kind of more important, and I think that's the way you should look at it. On the other hand, then he gets into the branding bullshit, and when set against the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really amount to much. It was interesting when 9/11 hit, so I've been through tumultuous times, the Kennedy assassinations, Martin Luther King, the riots in LA and around other places, the Vietnam War, of course, and we didn't know if the world was going to fall apart right then or just a little later. I was still in grade school for most of that. But 9/11, I had my own business, and what was interesting was I had two different clients. One was an art supplies client, a fine arts supplies client, and their phones went so dead they sent everybody home, even though they were in the West Coast, and the 9/11 was obviously in New York. Another client I had sold baseball equipment, and their phones were so busy that they couldn't take all the calls, which I think are the two main responses to times of trouble. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, we were taught to put ourselves under the desk, put our heads down, and pray. And I think that's where most people end up. Most people end up cocooning and looking for distractions and things. And in that context, entertainment oftentimes is a big help, a distraction, or whether it's positive or negative. And so I like the return of humor in some of the ads and some of the commercials. The Super Bowl, I think, had more humor in it than it has in many, many years. I think we've kind of lost humor in our society, with everyone being offended, and if anyone is even the thing that troubles me most is the potential for offense. Is that if there's a group of people that might be offended by what I say, then I shouldn't say it. And they may not ever say anything. They may not even be offended. But we have people who decide to advocate for the potentially offended or the hypothetically offended. But sometimes we have to tell a good joke. Oh, I heard a great joke the other day. My friend Jay Goltz. But he said I'm not allowed to tell it. So you have to call Jay. Artist frame service. Okay, so, people are putting yellow and blue flags up and identifying, you're right. Okay. But Vodafone and 3 played their part by making calls between the UK and Ukraine free. On voice over IP, I can kind of call almost anywhere for almost free. I remember when calling my grandmother in another city, just the next, we were in the suburbs, would cost like $1 a minute, and that would be like $10 a minute now. So I don't know. I mean, that's a nice gesture, but Carlsberg, the Danish brewery, said that's where Carlsberg is from. We were talking about them yesterday. said that all of its bottles are available for what? They didn't say. Although someone tweeted that maybe it's for Molotov cocktails, hence the Danish brewer. So you can get, I'm guessing it's empty bottles. But here was something really interesting. Elon Musk got a challenge from Ukraine's vice president to stop focusing on the colonization of Mars and turn his attention to the occupation of Ukraine. Musk has a track record of not only using social listening, but also making almost immediate tactical responses. In his best Tony Stark response, Starlink, which is some kind of satellite internet, I guess. I don't know that much about it, but apparently he turned it on, lit it up over Ukraine, and said that now more terminals would be en route, and just as Putin's rockets were targeting Ukraine's failing internet networks. Internet networks are really hard to knock out because any server, the internet finds its own path to you, between you and your targeted message. So I don't know if that is real either. I know that when the U.S. invaded Iraq, they were stunned at how resilient the Iraqi internet was. That they, no matter how much they knocked out, it was always still mostly running. So anyway, so he told a couple of stories at the end. This Willow, and I don't know how to pronounce that, Chikot, faced Russian invaders and opened her cellars and gave all the Cossacks champagne, saving her family and her staff in the villa or something. And she said, if I give it to them today, they drink. Tomorrow, they will pay. And apparently, it made champagne a popular beverage. I know that when my sister went to Russia in the 70s, you could get champagne and you could get vodka. Those were the two main drinks in Russia. So maybe this is what made it happen. And she made her fortune from exporting her wines to Russia on the back of her unintended marketing fame. Coca-Cola, I didn't know this either. Coca-Cola, Robert Woodruff, president of Coca-Cola, declared every man in uniform gets a bottle of Coca-Cola for 5 cents, whatever he is and whatever it costs the company. And so as the GIs traversed the globe during World War II, they were flabbergasted to see patriotic Coke ads and a ready supply of the famous beverage wherever they went. Okay? Coke employees became technical observers on every front line and worked with the U.S. government to install bottling plants everywhere American troops traveled. And where they were considered liberators, then Coke became a popular drink as a way of connecting with America. Coke's legendary bottling plants became permanent production facilities and a big part of the brand's eventual global domination. Okay, so do what you can. That's maybe, marketing people are very, very creative. So do what you can. Try to get as good of information as you can. And remember that most of this is probably cooked up as entertainment. And be careful. Be careful speaking out too loudly in any direction, I would say. And that includes me. So have a great day. Like and share. Your friends will know you're smart.